I bought this 97 Land Cruiser totaled, but I saw the potential. Follow along as I bring that vision to life. After completing the rear speakers, the next step in the 97 Revival is upgrading the front door speakers. To remove the factory units, I removed the 4 Phillips screws and used a small pry bar to separate the speaker from the panel. The factory adhesive was a lot more stubborn than the rears. Once it broke free, I reached in, unplugged the harness, and set the old speaker aside. Per the recommendation of other 80 series owners, I went with the Pioneer TS G1620F 6.5-inch speakers for the front. They're easy to source, sound great, and can maintain the OEM look with modification. The stock fronts are incredibly shallow and the new Pioneers are much deeper. The magnet hits the window rack, so a spacer is definitely required. Since I didn't have a 3D printer or a thin enough spacer, I reused the rear bracket from the original speaker. First, I snipped off the factory harness, blue is positive, white is negative, and set it aside. Using tin snips, I cut along the ribs of the brass bracket following the speaker's curve so less grinding would be needed later. At the rib with the terminals, I bent the connections out of the way, snapped them off, and finished that cut. Then I removed the single Phillips screw and gently pressed on the front paper cone until the bracket popped free, and cut away the remaining cone material. I scraped off the old film adhesive and used a Dremel to remove the front mesh, cutting carefully around the perimeter. Swapping to a grinding bit, I cleaned up the edges till they were smooth, and bam, the bracket could now be used as a spacer. Placing the spacer plastic side down, I aligned the mounting holes with the new speaker. I added thickness using 3M double-sided tape, laying down 2 full layers across the surface. After trimming around the mounting holes, this side of the spacer was ready to go. For the back side, I traced and cut a ring of the Silas foam and adhered it to the back and cut out the holes once again. One last layer of 3M went over the foam so the spacer would seal firmly to the door panel. It looked thick, but once compressed, it sat perfectly. Next, I trimmed off all 4 metal mounting ears on the speaker so it could recess properly. With everything mocked up, I secured the spacer to the speaker, peeled the film from the plastic side, and pressed it together firmly. I then moved on to wiring, stripping the blue and white wires from the OE harness, cut and stripping the supplied leads to length, and then sliding the heat shrink tubing over the wire before soldering the blue to the positive terminal and the white to the negative. Once I secured the heat shrink, I bent the terminals on the back of the speaker 90 degrees and plugged them in. With that, the speaker was complete and ready to mount. I then repeated the same process on the other side so I had both speakers ready to go. Here's where things got interesting. I used some hardware that I had laying around, drilling the holes slightly larger to fit. After connecting the harness and mounting the speakers, I turned on the car, only to find out the front speakers didn't work. I double-checked the wiring and connectors after removing them, but everything looked fine. So I decided to swap the front and rear speakers to see if the fronts had blown. Fortunately, both played perfectly, meaning that the speakers were fine and something else was wrong. In part 2, I'll walk through what caused the problem, how I fixed it, and what other modifications I needed to make to get this working. Let me know if you guys have any guesses.